On today's demonstration, I'd like to talk about the vertical drill press. This is a floor-mounted, upright model drill press. It's very important to work safely around the drill press again. Keep your workspace clean and organized. You want to make sure that your table is clean and that everything underneath the vise is clean. The bottom of the vise should be clean. If you ever notice that there's any damage on the table, please see your instructor. We have ways of taking care of that. We'll take any high spots off the table with a little honing stone, or we'll show you how to do that. Let's talk about the machine controls. The first thing I like to talk about is the quill feed handle. This is the handle you're going to use the most when you run the drill press. As you pull down on the handle, it extends the quill out of the machine. Now that's the primary action you're going to be using for drilling holes. This handle here is the feed selector. This machine is able to power feed. If you were to select different feed rates here, you can actually have the machine self-feed. And that's what these little red buttons do. If you push that button, the machine will take control over the feed rate. Up here on the very top are the RPM selectors. Now it's important to look at these and pay attention to where the arrow is pointing. This one can be confusing because sometimes the handle looks like it's selecting the RPM, but what you have to look at is where that arrow is pointing. So right now this one is pointing at this green line, so it's either going to be 354, 120, or 1026 RPMs. So this handle takes care of the columns, the vertical columns of numbers. The handle towards the rear takes care of these red lines. So if you look at that arrow, it's pointing to this red line. So if we follow that over to this green column, right now the machine is set up for 1026 RPMs. If you wanted to go 528 RPMs, you'll have to pull out on this handle, put the arrow in this position for the green line, and now we have to be on the top row, so that's this red line. So this arrow has to line up with that red line. So now this arrow, red line, top row, this arrow is on 528. So now let's talk about the controls on the front of the machine. The top button is spindle reverse, and you can tell by the arrow, it shows a counterclockwise arrow. The second button down shuts the spindle off. The third button shows clockwise rotation. That would be forward on this drill press. And then the bottom button turns off the power feed. If you are using the red buttons for power feed, you can either disengage the power feed by pushing the red button again, or you push this button. Like I say, for our first semester students, we don't use the power feed. Everything we're going to do is hand feed. So it's important to have this handle at 0, just in case you accidentally bump the power feed. It's not going to go anywhere. The top switch shows a little water faucet. That's for the coolant pump. This machine right now, we don't have any coolant in, but if you were to put coolant in the base of the machine, it would circulate coolant for cutting. The top switch is for the light. Right now I have the light on. Now the light's off. So the light is helpful when you're lining up on your workpiece, but just make sure you turn it off when you are done. As far as maintaining this machine, there's very little maintenance. There is no oilers really on the table at all. Just make sure that your table is clean and free of burrs. If you have any burrs on your table, we can hone those off. The problem is if there's any high spots in the table, it forces your work or your work holding devices to sit inaccurately on the table. As far as adjusting the table, there's 2 table clamps on the back side. You unclamp those and you can even swing the table out of the way. There will be times when you're working on large parts, you can set those on the base of the machine. On the base of the machine there's these 2 T-slots and you can put rather tall parts on the machine. The table is also adjustable as far as the height of the table. We can raise and lower this table. Back here are those 2 clamps. Normally they're clamped. If you unclamp those, you can lower or raise the table. Once you get it in the position you want it, clamp the table. And now the table does not move. For today's demonstration, I'm going to want the table centered in front of me. So those are the basic machine controls and the features on this machine.